He loved to quote the line, "William Miller who?" Very few knew the upstate New Yorker that was tapped by Barry Goldwater to be his vice presidential running mate in 1964. But it was not a Republican year. It was a landslide for Johnson and Humphrey. Fame did not escape William Miller, although a New York politician, congressman, and vice presidential candidate, that did not do it. An American Express commercial, capitalizing on his anonymity, finally did the trick. William Miller, dead at the age of 69. Sid Burns, ABC News.
Senator Barry Goldwater led the mourners at the funeral services today for William Miller, escorting Mrs. Miller into St. John the Baptist Church in Lockport, New York. Miller's coffin passed before an honor guard of Niagara County Sheriff's deputies. Though Goldwater and Miller lost in a landslide to Democrat Lyndon Johnson in 1964, in his eulogy, Goldwater said William Miller would be remembered for his contributions to his country. Miller's body will be buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia on Tuesday. Ron DePaulis, ABC News.
Among his other credits, William Miller was a first lieutenant in the U.S. Army, and today they laid his body to rest in Arlington Cemetery with full military honors. Besides his widow Stephanie and immediate family were some symbols of the Lockport native's political career: Kansas Senator Robert Dole and Senator Barry Goldwater, the man who projected Miller from relative obscurity to the Republican presidential ticket in 1964. It was a fitting ceremony for a man who had served his loved ones, state, and country so well. The gravesite was selected for Miller in Arlington next to where another New Yorker, former Senator Ken Keating, is buried. After the rest had given their final farewells, one of Miller's 3 daughters lingered for a private goodbye to a good man and a good father. Bob Petrick, News 4, Washington.
A prominent political figure from Western New York has lost his life. William Miller of Lockport, the 1964 Republican vice presidential candidate, died today at the age of 69. He will be buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Penny Daniels takes a look back at Mr. Miller's political career.
He was one of the greatest men I ever knew, and I feel his loss very deeply.
You are listening to Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater talking about the late William Miller. Miller was Goldwater's running mate during the 1964 presidential campaign. It was considered a good match by Republicans, the moderate to liberal northerner Miller, and Goldwater, the southwestern conservative. But the ticket evidently didn't match the country's mood. Democrats Lyndon Johnson and Hubert Humphrey carried the day. Miller's political roots were planted right here in Niagara County. He was born and raised here in Lockport, was the county district attorney during the late 1940s, and then served as U.S. congressman from the area for 14 years. Jig Garlock, owner of Garlock's restaurant in Lockport, was one of Miller's closest friends. When Miller went on the campaign trail in 1964, Garlock went along.
Anybody who said hello to him or talked to him, wanted to talk to him, he just never passed anybody up, never snubbed anybody, and with his credentials, I mean, he was, after all, a very important man.
After the election, Miller returned to his law practice in Buffalo, but he's still remembered by politicians in the highest places. His wife, Stephanie, received flowers and a phone call today from President and Nancy Reagan, and Barry Goldwater is expected to give the eulogy at Miller's funeral. Nevertheless, Garlock says, even when Miller was most important, he was just one of the boys.
He was just a regular guy.
You loved him?
Absolutely. And many, many other people, I could name an awful lot of names in this town who felt the same way as I did. God bless him.
Penny Daniels, Channel 7 Eyewitness News in Lockport.
Republican Senator Barry Goldwater will deliver the eulogy during the funeral of William Miller. The former vice presidential candidate will be laid to rest following services Monday morning at St. John's Catholic Church in Lockport. Miller was Goldwater's running mate in the 1964 election when they lost in a landslide to Lyndon Johnson and Hubert Humphrey. Miller died Friday at the age of 69 at Millard Fillmore Hospital in Buffalo. Miller, a Lockport native, was a 7-term congressman. He retired from politics and returned to his law practice after the 1964 election.
In Lockport today, funeral services were held for former vice presidential candidate William Miller. Hundreds of people crowded into a church, including Senator Barry Goldwater, who delivered a eulogy to his former friend and running mate. John Bowman reports.
69-year-old William Miller of Lockport is to be buried in Arlington National Cemetery tomorrow. Today, his hometown said goodbye. A massive resurrection was held at St. John's Church. Miller, who served in the military and in the political arena, was eulogized as a man who served his family, party, and country well. The oldest of the Miller children, Libby, then told all that their father was the son the children revolved around.
We will go on with our lives, and in whatever we do, we will be ever striving to make him as proud of us as we are of him.
His friend of 35 years took his turn at remembering Bill.
He made every one of us better, and he made of his country a better place to live.
Goldwater then read from a letter from the house Miller missed seen from the inside.
Dear Stephanie, Nancy and I were deeply saddened to learn of Bill's death. We pray that God will bless you and warm memories, sustain and console you and your family now and the days ahead. Sincerely, Ronald Reagan.
Bill Miller will best be remembered as a vice presidential candidate in the '64 elections. But here in Lockport, he will be remembered as a good father and a great neighbor. John Bowman, Channel 7 Eyewitness News, Lockport.
He was known as Mr. Republican here in Western New York, and for one brief shining moment, he stood a chance of becoming the Vice President of the United States of America. But tonight, Lockport's William Miller is dead at the age of 69. Miller reached the pinnacle of his political career as he stood hand in hand with Senator Barry Goldwater on a warm summer's night in 1964 at the Cow Palace in San Francisco, the vice presidential nominee of his party. Up until that moment, Miller had served the congressional district encompassing Niagara County and northern Erie County for 14 years. He held powerful positions in the House of Representatives, including the chairmanship of the Republican National Committee. Miller stepped out of relative obscurity into the national limelight, but never lost the small-town qualities which endeared him to political allies and adversaries alike.
Bill lived his life the way I think all people should live their lives, with the idea to serve his fellow man, fellow woman, and I think he did an admirable job of it, not only in the field of politics, the field of friendship, religion, but just living as I think he should. He was one of the greatest men I ever knew, and I feel his loss very deeply.
Because he was not widely known nationally, except for his vice presidential nomination, Miller became something of a curiosity, appearing in television ads for American Express asking the question,
You know me. I ran for vice president of the United States in '64, so I shouldn't have trouble charging a meal, should I? Well, I do. That's why I carry an American Express card.
Miller stayed on as a lawyer here in Western New York until his death today. Miller was hospitalized in Millard Fillmore Hospital 2 weeks ago to undergo tests, but last weekend he suffered a stroke. He passed away this morning at 3:45 a.m. A massive Christian burial will be said on Monday, June 27th at St. John's Church in Lockport at 10:30 in the morning. Burial will be held Tuesday in Washington's Arlington National Cemetery.
It was a moving tribute today for one of our own, Lockport native William Miller, who was this country's Republican vice presidential candidate in 1964. Mr. Miller died on Friday. His longtime friend Barry Goldwater was here to deliver the eulogy. Marie Rice reports.
Mrs. William Miller arrived today on the arm of the man who had chosen her husband as his vice presidential running mate, Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater. A row of sheriff's deputies stood at attention as Miller's coffin entered St. John the Baptist Church in Lockport, Miller's birthplace. Miller's grandchildren, son, and 3 daughters all participated today. Libby said as the senior member, she was chosen for the family eulogy.
We cannot imagine a world without Dad. We will go on with our lives, and in whatever we do, we will be ever striving to make him as proud of us as we are of him.
Then Senator Goldwater remembered his longtime friend of 35 years, saying it was not the easiest task. The word eulogy, he said, should be used with real purpose and understanding.
Man is born to serve. It's the only reason we're here. Did he serve well? Yes, he served well. He served with love and devotion.
Then Goldwater read these words from a letter to Mrs. Miller he had hand-carried from the president.
We pray that God will bless you and warm memories sustain and console you and your family now and the days ahead. Sincerely, Ronald Reagan.
Goldwater left the podium in tears. Marie Rice, News 4, Lockport.
The body of William Miller of Lockport was laid to rest today at Arlington National Cemetery. Bob Petrick reports from Washington.
Among his other credits, William Miller was a first lieutenant in the U.S. Army, and today they laid his body to rest in Arlington Cemetery with full military honors. Besides his widow Stephanie and immediate family were some symbols of the Lockport native's political career. Kansas Senator Robert Dole and Senator Barry Goldwater, the man who projected Miller from relative obscurity to the Republican presidential ticket in 1964. It was a fitting ceremony for a man who had served his loved ones, state, and country so well. The grave site was selected for Miller in Arlington next to where another New Yorker, former Senator Ken Keating, is buried. After the rest had given their final farewells, one of Miller's 3 daughters lingered for a private goodbye to a good man and a good father. Bob Petrick, News 4, Washington.
There is an appointed time for everything, and a time for every affair under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die.
A handful of politicians joined several hundred of William Miller's family and friends. They paid their last respects at St. John the Baptist Church in Lockport. Miller died early Friday, the result of a stroke. Bill Miller was a lawyer, one-time chairman of the Republican National Committee, and a congressman from Western New York for 14 years. In 1964, Miller was nominated to run for vice president on the GOP line with Barry Goldwater. The ticket went down to defeat in the election in what's become known as the Johnson landslide.
Man is born to serve. It's the only reason we're here.
It was Goldwater who was called upon to deliver the eulogy. He described Bill Miller as a man who served his family and his country with love and devotion. Then Goldwater read a letter from the President of the United States.
During the 1964 campaign, Bill Miller gained the respect and gratitude of all Americans for his capable articulation of the principles of our party. All of us who have come after him are his beneficiaries, and we will remember his contribution for a long time to come. Sincerely, Ronald Reagan. I can't think of any more that I can say about my friend.
William Miller's body is now on its way to the Washington, D.C. area. He'll be buried tomorrow at the Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. Dick Lisinski, News Center 2, in Lockport.
The man who came to San Francisco expecting to win the Republican nomination in a walk appears heading in that direction as the GOP convention opens. Senator Barry Goldwater is claiming more delegates than he needs to win on the first ballot. And when he addresses the platform committee, he appears to be a man who exudes confidence. He gives the committee a preview of his campaign tactics. He calls for a tougher stand on the red bloc and for less government at home. Fighting a rearguard action to the very end, Governor William Scranton and his backers attempted a floor fight over the seating of a Negro delegate from Tennessee. Scranton was defeated in a voice vote, and his followers girded for another battle. Meanwhile, former President Dwight Eisenhower arrives by train for the convention, still mum on his choice. Later, he said that the GOP platform need not have a plank condemning the extreme rightists. On the eve of the convention, the largest civil rights demonstration since the March on Washington last summer is assembled before the San Francisco City Hall. 40,000 people, half of them Negroes, demonstrate against Goldwater and hear from Henry Cabot Lodge and other anti-Goldwater leaders. Unsuccessful candidate Nelson Rockefeller is another attending the rally. Arriving at GOP headquarters in the St. Francis Hotel is the keynote speaker of the convention, Governor Mark O. Hatfield of Oregon. It's the keynoter who sets the tone of the coming campaign. Before going to the Cow Palace to give his address, Governor Hatfield gives some highlights of his speech for Universal Newsreel cameras.
The Republican Party offers to the voters of this country, to Republicans, to Democrats, and to independents alike, a faith in believing in the American people and their capacity to govern themselves, a faith in American labor, its right to organize, and its expectation that there will not be penalizing kind of legislation to thwart their cause, a faith in the federal system of our government, that the states and the local governments do have a place and a role to play in our great scheme of government, a faith in the American farmer, a faith in minorities to make and to continue to make contributions, a faith in our ability to eliminate bigotry from this nation, whether it is in the Communist Party or the Ku Klux Klan or the John Birch Society. This is the party of faith, a faith that believes in the basic eternal moral values of the Judeo-Christian faith. All of this means that America does have a choice. It has a choice of continuing with a party of fear or turning to a party of faith and progressive spirit.
The decks are cleared for action. Morris Goldwater, grandson of a Polish immigrant, senator from Arizona, and leader of the Conservatives, is the Republican choice to oppose Lyndon Johnson for the presidency. As his family proudly watches at San Francisco, Senator Goldwater's name is put into nomination by Senator Everett Dirksen of Illinois, and that sets off a wild demonstration by Goldwater supporters. For 29 minutes, the demonstration thunders through Cow Palace. Their triumph is almost complete. To come is the formality of the ballot, with Goldwater's nomination assured on the first round of voting. Then Governor Nelson Rockefeller, no longer a serious contender, has his name placed before the convention and receives a 22-minute tribute to his long but losing fight. A favorite son candidate, Hawaii's Senator Hiram Fong, becomes the first Asiatic to have his name placed in nomination. Senator Margaret Chase Smith of Maine receives a warm and sprightly tribute, honor for the first woman to have her name before a major political convention. Then Senator Goldwater's only major contender, Governor William Scranton of Pennsylvania. His family watches with pride as he is nominated by Milton Eisenhower, the ex-president's brother.
I now nominate as the Republican candidate for the presidency of the United States, William Warren Scranton of Pennsylvania.
Scranton supporters, well realizing they have fought a losing cause, stage a 28-minute demonstration with all of the vigor that marked Governor Scranton's fight for the nomination. Then the balloting begins. Scranton and his fellow moderates refused at this point to allow Goldwater's nomination by acclamation. The polling of the states begins with Alabama and slowly proceeds in alphabetical order. Slowly and inexorably, the tide for Goldwater rises as state after state casts most of its votes for the senator. There are 1,308 delegates voting. To win, the candidate must poll 655. Now the senator is within 15 votes of victory.
Oregon, 18, Rockefeller.
Pennsylvania, 64 votes.
Mr. Chairman.
Pennsylvania gives Goldwater 4 of its votes, and then Rhode Island adds 3. This brings the total to 647 with 8 more needed. Victory is close at hand. Now South Carolina's 16 votes would put Barry Goldwater over the top.
South Carolina, 16 votes.
Mr. Chairman, humbly grateful that we can do this for America. South Carolina cast 16 votes for Senator Barry Goldwater.
Tumult and shouting begins right then and there. The rest of the balloting is anticlimax to the boisterous crowd. In a favorite phrase of their candidate, Barry Goldwater has it made. Governor Scranton comes to the Speaker's platform to enter a plea for unity among the conservative, moderate, and liberal wings of the Republican Party. His move to make the nomination unanimous met with failure, but otherwise the Goldwater victory is overwhelming, 883 votes. Senator Goldwater chose as his running mate William Miller of New York, the retiring GOP national chairman. This will match two conservatives against President Johnson and a Democratic vice presidential candidate yet to be chosen. Then it's on with the campaign.
My friend, Chuck Percy, surely the next governor of the state of Illinois, delegates to this convention, my fellow Republicans and my fellow citizens. There are, at this moment, no words to convey my feelings. I love this country with all my heart. I love this party, the finest instrument for good government this country has ever known. I love the people of the United States of America. 200 million strong, devoted to God, consecrated to liberty, and all crusaders for justice, all crusaders for equality of opportunity for every person on the face of the earth. And on this point, I want the record unmistakably clear. I vastly admire and respect the courage, the integrity, the selfless commitment to principle of one of the most dynamic and forceful leaders in the nation's history, Senator Barry Goldwater of Indiana. To be asked to serve under his leadership is a tremendous honor. To be asked to carry forward with him his struggle for victory for all freedoms is a magnificent opportunity. To be asked to join with millions of fellow citizens in a nationwide crusade to regain respect abroad for this land of liberty and to reestablish reason in government here at home is no less than a thrilling experience. I have no misconceptions about my role. Our party is favored with vibrant, able, and dedicated leadership from Maine to Hawaii and from Florida to Alaska. I know them all, and I know that any of these leaders are fitted far better than I to wage the great struggle ahead. But my friends, my family and I here pledge ourselves to you that we shall devote our hearts and our hands, our energies and our abilities, and our spirit and our enthusiasm in this greatest challenge of my lifetime. And we shall do so every minute of every hour of every day from this point forward. My fellow Republicans, 4 years have passed since the most beloved American in the world retired from the presidency to his farm at Gettysburg. During his Republican administration, loyally supported by the Republicans in the Congress, this nation had a new birth of freedom, a new dignity in the community of nations, and a new strength and domestic tranquility at home. His inspiration and his example permeate our party. his inspiration and his example guide us still. And as he indicated 2 evenings ago, he stands ready with all other Republicans to join with us in once again carrying forward our commitments for the well-being of every human being. And so now, in this great common purpose, I now stand at the side of a man who, more than any other I have ever known in American life, speaks the truth to the people, courageously stands for principle, and devotes himself completely to keeping America free, the great son from Arizona, Barry Goldwater. Ladies and gentlemen, it is in this great purpose that now I humbly accept the great honor you have bestowed upon me here, your nomination for the Vice Presidency of the United States. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Next is a speech by Richard Nixon, who will ask for unity in the party and introduce Senator Goldwater.
The senator is entering the Cow Palace from the trailer home of Representative Miller, the national chairman. He didn't stand by in the what has been called the VIP trailer.
front base of the speaker's stand, there's a bank of balloons about 3 feet deep. Somebody's clearing them away. That'll be fun. Job? Balloon buster. No, it's the Sergeant-at-Arms clearing the aisles. On the stand with Senator and Mrs. Goldwater and 2 sons, 2 daughters, and 2 sons-in-law.
My good friend and great Republican,
Dick Nixon, and your charming wife, Pat, my running mate, that wonderful Republican who has served us so well for so long, Bill Miller, and his wife, Stephanie, to Thurston Morton, who's done such a commendable job in chairmaning this convention. To Mr. Herbert Hoover, whom I hope is watching, and to that great American and his wife, General and Mrs. Eisenhower. To my own wife, my family, and to all of my fellow Republicans here assembled and Americans across this great nation. From this moment, united and determined, we will go forward together, dedicated to the ultimate and undeniable greatness of the whole man. Together we will win. I accept your nomination with a deep sense of humility. I accept, too, the responsibility that goes with it, and I seek your continued help and your continued guidance. My fellow Republicans, our cause is too great for any man to feel worthy of it. Our task would be too great for any man did he not have with him the hearts and the hands of this great Republican Party. And I promise you tonight that every fiber of my being is consecrated to our cause, that nothing shall be lacking from the struggle that can be brought to it by enthusiasm, by devotion, and plain hard work. In this world, no person, no party can guarantee anything. But what we can do, and what we shall do, is to deserve victory, and victory will be ours. The good Lord raised this mighty republic to be a home for the brave and to flourish as the land of the free. Not to stagnate in the swampland of collectivism, not to cringe before the bullying of communism. Now, my fellow Americans, the tide has been running against freedom. Our people have followed false prophet. We must and we shall return to proven ways, not because they are old, but because they are true. We must and we shall set the tides running again in the cause of freedom. And this party, with its every action, every word, every breath, and every heartbeat, has but a single resolve, and that is freedom. Freedom made orderly for this nation by our constitutional government. Freedom under a government limited by the laws of nature and of nature's God. Freedom balanced so that order, lacking liberty, will not become the slavery of the prison shell. Balanced so that liberty, lacking order, will not become the license of the mob and of the jungle. Now we Americans understand freedom. We have earned it, we have lived for it, and we have died for it. This nation and its people are freedom's model in a searching world. We can be freedom's missionaries in a doubting world. But ladies and gentlemen, first we must renew freedom's vision in our own hearts and in our own homes. During 4 futile years, the administration which we shall replace has distorted and lost that vision. It has talked and talked and talked and talked the words of freedom, but it has failed and failed and failed in the works of freedom. Now, failures cement the wall of shame in Berlin. Failures blot the sands of shame at the Bay of Pigs. Failures mark the slow death of freedom in Laos. Failures infest the jungles of Vietnam. And failures haunt the houses of our once great alliances and undermine the greatest bulwark ever erected by free nations, the NATO community. Failures proclaim lost leadership, obscure purpose, weakening will, and the risk of inciting our sworn enemies to new aggressions and to new excesses. And because of this administration, we are tonight a world divided. We are a nation becalmed. We have lost the brisk pace of diversity and the genius of individual creativity. We are plodding along at a pace set by centralized planning, red tape, rules without responsibility, and regimentation without recourse. Rather than useful jobs in our country, our people have been offered bureaucratic make-work. Rather than moral leadership, they have been given bread and circuses. They have been given spectacles, and yes, they've even been given scandals. Tonight, there is violence in our streets, corruption in our highest offices, aimlessness amongst our youth, anxiety among our elders, and there's a virtual despair among the many who look beyond material success for the inner meaning of their lives. And where examples of morality should be set, the opposite is seen. Small men seeking great wealth or power have too often and too long turned even the highest levels of public service into mere personal opportunity. Now, certainly simple honesty is not too much to demand of men in government. We find it in most. Republicans demand it from everyone. They demand it from everyone, no matter how exalted or protected his position might be. Now, the growing menace in our country tonight to personal safety, to life, to limb and property, in homes, in churches, on the playgrounds and places of business, particularly in our great cities, is the mounting concern, or should be, of every thoughtful citizen in the United States. Security from domestic violence, no less than from foreign aggression, is the most elementary and fundamental purpose of any government. And a government that cannot fulfill this purpose is one that cannot long command the loyalty of its citizens. History shows us, it demonstrates that nothing prepares the way for tyranny more than the failure of public officials to keep the streets safe from bullies and marauders. Now, we Republicans see all this as much more than the result of mere political differences or mere political mistakes. We see this as the result of a fundamentally and absolutely wrong view of man, his nature, and his destiny. Those who seek to live your lives for you, to take your liberties in return for relieving you of yours, those who elevate the state and downgrade the citizen, must see ultimately a world in which earthly power can be substituted for divine will. And this nation was founded upon the rejection of that notion and upon the acceptance of God as the author of freedom. Now, those who seek absolute power, even though they seek it to do what they regard as good, are simply demanding the right to enforce their own version of heaven on earth. And let me remind you, they are the very ones who always create the most hellish tyrannies. Absolute power does corrupt, and those who seek it must be suspect and must be opposed. Their mistaken course stems from false notions, ladies and gentlemen, of equality. Equality, rightly understood, as our founding fathers understood it, leads to liberty and to the emancipation of creative differences. Wrongly understood, as it has been so tragically in our time, it leads first to conformity and then to despotism. Fellow Republicans, it is the cause of republicanism to resist concentrations of power, private or public, which enforce such conformity and inflict such despotism. It is a cause of republicanism to ensure that power remains in the hands of the people And so help us God, that is exactly what a Republican president will do with the help of a Republican Congress. It is further the cause of republicanism to restore a clear understanding of the tyranny of man over man in the world at large. It is our cause to dispel the foggy thinking which avoids hard decisions in the delusion that a world of conflict will somehow mysteriously resolve itself into a world of harmony if we just don't rock the boat or irritate the forces of aggression. And this is hogwash. It is further the cause of republicanism to remind ourselves and the world that only the strong can remain free, that only the strong can keep the peace. Now, I needn't remind you or my fellow Americans, regardless of party, that Republicans have shouldered this hard responsibility and marched in this cause before. It was Republican leadership under Dwight Eisenhower that kept the peace and passed along to this administration the mightiest arsenal for defense the world has ever known. And I needn't remind you that it was the strength and the believable will of the Eisenhower years that kept the peace by using our strength, by using it in the Formosa Straits and in Lebanon, and by showing it courageously at all times. It was during those Republican years that the thrust of communist imperialism was blunted. It was during those years of Republican leadership that this world moved closer, not to war, but closer to peace than at any other time in the last 3 decades. And I needn't remind you, but I will, that it's been during Democratic years that our strength to deter war has stood still and even gone into a planned decline. It has been during Democratic years that we have weakly stumbled into conflict, timidly refusing to draw our own lines against aggression, deceitfully refusing to tell even our own people of our full participation, and tragically letting our finest men die on battlefields unmarked by purpose, unmarked by pride, or the prospect of victory. Yes. Yesterday, it was Korea. Tonight, it is Vietnam. Make no bones of this. Don't try to sweep this under the rug. We are at war in Vietnam. And yet the President, who is the Commander-in-Chief of our forces, refuses to say, mind you, whether or not the objective over there is victory. and his Secretary of Defense continues to mislead and misinform the American people, and enough of it's gone by. And I needn't remind you, but I will. It has been during democratic years that 1 billion persons were cast into communist captivity and their fate cynically sealed. Today in our beloved country, we have an administration which seems eager to deal with communism in every coin known, from gold to wheat, from consulates to confidences, and even human freedom itself. Now the Republican cause demands that we brand communism as the principal disturber of peace in the world today. Indeed, we should brand it as the only significant disturber of the peace. And we must make clear that until its goals of conquest are absolutely renounced and its relations with all nations tempered, communism and the governments it now controls are enemies of every man on earth who is or wants to be free. Now, we here in America can keep the peace only if we remain vigilant and only if we remain strong. Only if we keep our eyes open and keep our guard up can we prevent war. And I want to make this abundantly clear. I don't intend to let peace or freedom be torn from our grasp because of lack of strength or lack of will, and that I promise you Americans. I believe that we must look beyond the defense of freedom today to its extension tomorrow. I believe that the communism which boasts it will bury us will instead give way to the forces of freedom. And I can see in the distant and yet recognizable future the outlines of a world worthy of our dedication, our every risk, our every effort, our every sacrifice along the way. Yes, a world that will redeem the suffering of those who will be liberated from tyranny. I can see, and I suggest that all thoughtful men must contemplate the flowering of an Atlantic civilization, the whole of Europe reunified and freed, trading openly across its borders, communicating openly across the world. Now, this is a goal far, far more meaningful than a moonshot. It's a truly inspiring goal for all free men to set for themselves during the latter half of the 20th century. I can see, and all free men must thrill to, the advance of this Atlantic civilization, joined by its great ocean highway to the United States. What a destiny! What a destiny can be ours to stand as a great central pillar linking Europe, the Americas, and the venerable and vital peoples and cultures of the Pacific. I can see a day when all the Americas, north and south, will be linked in a mighty system, a system in which the errors and misunderstandings of the past will be submerged one by one in a rising tide of prosperity and interdependence. We know that the misunderstandings of centuries are not to be wiped away in a day or wiped away in an hour. But we pledge that human sympathy, what our neighbors to the south call an attitude of simpatico, no less than enlightened self-interest, will be our guide. And I can see this Atlantic civilization galvanizing and guiding emergent nations everywhere. Now, I know that freedom is not the fruit of every soil. I know that our own freedom was achieved through centuries by unremitting efforts of brave and wise men. And I know that the road to freedom is a long and a challenging road. And I know also that some men may walk away from it, that some men resist challenge, accepting the false security of governmental paternalism. And I pledge that the America I envision in the years ahead will extend its hand in help, in teaching, and in cultivation, so that all new nations will be at least encouraged to go our way, so that they will not wander down the dark alleys of tyranny or the dead-end streets of collectivism. My fellow Republicans, we do no man a service by hiding freedom's light under a bushel of mistaken humility. I seek an America proud of its past, proud of its ways, proud of its dreams, and determined actively to proclaim them. But our example to the world must, like charity, begin at home. In our vision of a good and decent future, free and peaceful, there must be room for the liberation of the energy and the talent of the individual. Otherwise, our vision is blind at the outset. We must assure a society here which, while never abandoning the needy or forsaking the helpless, nurtures incentives and opportunities for the creative and the productive. We must know the whole good is the product of many single contributions. And I cherish a day when our children once again will restore as heroes the sort of men and women who, unafraid and undaunted, pursue the truth, strive to cure disease, subdue and make fruitful our natural environment, and produce the inventive engines of production, science, and technology. This nation, whose creative people have enhanced this entire span of history, should again thrive upon the greatness of all those things which we as individual citizens can and should do. And during Republican years, this again will be a nation of men and women, of families proud of their roles, jealous of their responsibilities, unlimited in their aspirations, a nation where all who can will be self-reliant. We Republicans see in our constitutional form of government the great framework which assures the orderly but dynamic fulfillment of the whole man. And we see the whole man as the great reason for instituting orderly government in the first place. We see in private property and an economy based upon and fostering private property the one way to make government a durable ally of the whole man rather than his determined enemy. We see in the sanctity of private property the only durable foundation for constitutional government in a free society. And beyond that, we see and cherish diversity of ways, diversity of thoughts, of motives, and accomplishments. We don't seek to live anyone's life for him. We only seek to secure his rights, guarantee him opportunity, to strive, with government performing only those needed and constitutionally sanctioned tasks which cannot otherwise be performed. We Republicans seek a government that attends to its inherent responsibilities of maintaining a stable monetary and fiscal climate, encouraging a free and a competitive economy, and enforcing law and order. Thus do we seek inventiveness, diversity, and creative difference within a stable order. For we Republicans define government's role where needed at many, many levels. Preferably, though, the one closest to the people involved. Our towns and our cities, then our counties, then our states, then our regional compacts, and only then the national government. That, let me remind you, is the ladder of liberty built by decentralized power. On it also we must have balance between the branches of government at every level. Balance, diversity, creative difference. These are the elements of the Republican equation. Republicans agree heartily to disagree on many, many of their applications. But we have never disagreed on the basic fundamental issues of why you and I are Republicans. This is a party, this Republican Party is a party for free men, not for blind followers and not for conformists. In fact, in 1858, Abraham Lincoln said this of the Republican Party, and I quote him because he probably could have said it during the last week or so. It was composed of strange, discordant, and even hostile elements. End of the quote, 1958. Yet all of these elements agreed on one paramount objective: to arrest the progress of slavery and place it in the course of ultimate extinction. Today, as then, but more urgently and more broadly than then, the task of preserving and enlarging freedom at home and of safeguarding it from the forces of tyranny abroad is great enough to challenge all our resources and to require all our strength. Anyone who joins us in all sincerity, we welcome. Those who do not care for our cause, we don't expect to enter our ranks in any case. And let our republicanism, so focused and so dedicated, not be made fuzzy and futile by unthinking and stupid labels. I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. Let me remind you also that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue. By the beauty of the very system we Republicans are pledged to restore and revitalize, the beauty of this federal system of ours is in its reconciliation of diversity with unity. We must not see malice in honest differences of opinion, and no matter how great, so long as they are not inconsistent with the pledges we have given to each other in and through our Constitution. Our Republican cause is not to level out the world or make its people conform in computer-regimented sameness. Our Republican cause is to free our people and light the way for liberty throughout the world. Ours is a very human cause for very humane goals. This party, its good people, and its unquenchable devotion to freedom will not fulfill the purposes of this campaign, which we launch here and now, until our cause has won the day, inspired the world, and shown the way to a tomorrow worthy of all our yesteryears, I repeat, I accept your nomination with humbleness, with pride, and you and I are going to fight for the goodness of our land. Thank you.